All right, back with another question of the day. It's the show with my questions and your answers. Last episode, I asked you what team will be disappointing in 2022. What team do you think has too high expectations and will not meet those? My question for tomorrow, I figured, hey, let's have a fun one. Keep with this kind of negative energy going a little bit. Let's see who for tomorrow. Put in the comments below who you think is a fraud. What player is a fraud? A player who you're just not buying is as successful as other people are buying. Going to leave it open-ended. Can be a quarterback or a different position or even coach. Put in the comments below. Give me your answer along with a 1 to 2 sentence response, and you might get it in the next video. But let's get into today's video. Right off the bat, a team that I think will have a very disappointing year are the San Diego Chargers. I appreciate using San Diego instead of Los Angeles. I know they loaded up in the offseason, and they also showed a ton of promise last year. They are in the hardest division in the entire league. That's kind of a negative. They're in the hardest division in the entire league. Plus, I know this might not be a quantifiable analysis, but the other 3 teams in the AFC West all have playoff experience at the quarterback position. Most people really like Herbert, but he just needs to prove he can get it done in the playoffs first. Listen, it's fair to say that, yes, it's true that, playoff experience, there is some value in that. You can't quantify it, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So I don't hate that. And I also think it's fair to say it's yes, they added a lot in the offseason, but they had a ton of cap space. They were supposed to add a lot in the offseason, and, many feel as though did a good job. I don't think it's crazy to think. It's not a horrible take at all to say that the Chargers could maybe not live up to some expectations that are very high. The flip side, though, is they still have, an incredible quarterback on a rookie deal. So they're probably going to be pretty good regardless, of what happens there. But I do understand the logic behind it. Here's a bold one. Hot take. Packers. I don't think they did enough to replace the play of Davante Adams, in quote marks. Who knows how much of an impact Watson will be year one, and maybe we don't see signs of Rodgers regressing, and maybe we will see signs of Rodgers regressing a bit at 38. Not everyone is Tom Brady, referring to how long Tom Brady has played. They still will be good, but there may be some other teams ready to take the leap in the NFC race. Again, I could totally see this. I think there's a very real chance the Packers do regress. It's just worth mentioning, it's hard to win 13 games in a season. So if they win 11 games, that's still a great season, but, it's obviously not living up to the high impact, the high expectations they have. And it's also fair to say, listen, Christian Watson is a bit of a developmental guy. Who knows if he'll be able to live up to that? And the reality is, he's certainly not going to be Davante Adams. So it's hard to imagine them not getting worse after this 1 year by losing Adams. And I also feel like they could have still added to the receiving core, which I think matters a lot. So I do understand the logic, but again, kind of going back to my last point as well, if they have Aaron Rodgers, they're probably going to still be all right. This next one was a popular one. I think the Cowboys will disappoint. They won 12 games last year, but I don't think they got much better and actually lost some pieces in the offseason. Their draft was on the weaker side. Meanwhile, the Eagles, Commanders, and Giants all improved significantly, in my opinion, with their off seasons and drafts. Their schedule is tough. I think they will hover in the 8 to 10 win range only. Another thing I could definitely see, you're right, they did lose pieces. And typically in the NFL, they say if you're not getting better, you're getting worse, because every team thinks they're getting better, so you have to be getting much better. They significantly got worse in terms of what they have currently. You're right, their draft I didn't think was one of the better drafts, and losing guys losing Amari Cooper, regardless of how good you think he is, that's going to hurt them. So I guess the only question is, what are their expectations? But let's be honest, it's the Cowboys. Someone's going to give them, super high expectations. Someone's going to pick them to win the Super Bowl. So they probably won't live up to that. I think that's a fair take. The Patriots lost key pieces on both sides of the team, like J.C. Jackson, also downgraded at guard with Cole Strange, and lost Josh McDaniels, which will all make the team worse in a competitive division where all the other teams have a chance to make the playoffs. I think the Pats will disappoint and miss the playoffs. I could see this. I definitely could. Everything you're saying makes total sense. And in fact, if it was, on 31 teams, I would be fully agreeing with you, saying listen, losing all the players that you have lost and losing a good offensive coordinator, regardless of how you feel about him as a coach, very good offensive coordinator for sure. Losing all that stuff should hurt you, but it's the Patriots, right? And the Patriots just find a way. So that's kind of why I'm still going to trust Bill Belichick, and I'm not willing to fully go there yet, But everything you're saying absolutely makes sense, and there's definitely very real logic to believe that. They did lose talent, and like we said, when you're losing talent, you're probably not going to be as good next year. The Broncos. People assume Wilson will come in and make this team an instant Super Bowl contender, but I don't see it. The O-line isn't much better than what Wilson had in Seattle, and his new receiving core is definitely a downgrade now that Fant is gone. This, plus Wilson not being able to scramble like he used to, makes me question how he will be able to perform. All of this, on top of being in the hardest division in football, makes even making the playoffs is not a given for the Broncos. So, yeah, again, I see the logic behind it. I can understand why you're saying this. I think the offensive line's a little bit better than maybe the consensus is giving it credit for. I think it's all right. Again, I haven't gone through and really done my preseason evaluations for each team yet, but my gut says I think it's better than what he had in Seattle. But him not being able to scramble, you're right, is a bit of a concern. Although I still think he can play even without that, but it's a bit of a concern. And yeah, I think that the receiving core probably is a more complete one in Denver, but I don't know if it has the star power that he had with Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf in Seattle. That's definitely, for sure, the thing. So, again, I see the logic behind it. I don't think they're favorites to win the Super Bowl, but I still think that adding a great quarterback is going to, get you a big step in that direction. So I see it. I think the Chiefs are going to fail to meet their expectations. They just lost Tyreek Hill and Tyrann Mathieu, and their defense was overall mediocre last year. Their offense was carrying the team for the past few years, and they aren't going to be nearly as explosive now. I think they're relying too much on their defensive rookies to shine in year one, plus their division is vastly more difficult in this upcoming year. So I get it. I agree and disagree with this one because, like I said with Davante Adams, losing Tyreek Hill, hard to imagine your team getting better because of that, at least in the short term. Now, I think that in the long term, you can definitely see the logic behind this move. Had a lot of draft picks and I think drafted well, but like you said, which I do kind of agree with, you're relying a lot on rookies to come in and do a lot of damage year one, which is going to be tough. Like that's a lot of tough, expectation, and a lot of times it doesn't live up to those expectations. So I get it. Obviously, losing Matthew is going to hurt as well. I did think they did a pretty solid job of building a more complete receiving core. So while they don't have the star power, kind of what we talked about with Wilson, not going to have the star power, but does have a bit more of a complete receiving core. So I think that alone is going to, I'm not sure if it'll help or hurt. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. It is fascinating. I saw other comments bringing out the fact that teams, know how to play Mahomes now. Mahomes wasn't as explosive last year, but they still had the best points per drive numbers in football last year. So it's going to be tough for me to bet against Mahomes. It just is. But I think that everything you're saying makes sense. And finally, Zachary Stewart says Titans are going to disappoint. Henry running like he has been is not sustainable, and Ryan Tannehill is scheme dependent. I'm also still not a fan of their receiving core, and their defense in general is hard to predict year to year. I just feel like it's going to be an 8-win season. Yeah, I get it. I mean, listen, I thought they overperformed last year a little bit. I thought they were still good last year, but I did think they overperformed a little bit. I didn't think they were the best team in the AFC last year, like their record showed, but they were still very good last year. I get what you're saying. Any team that's relying on a running back to be a star, it's concerning, especially when that running back has a lot of, has some mileage on him now and is coming off an injury. Like, I know Derrick Henry is a freak, and we kind of want to throw the book out with Derrick Henry because he's, he breaks the rules. He's the exception, not the rule. He still is a human. Like, he's, that still does factor in. So maybe it'll work for this year, but there is a risk factor there. Ryan Tannehill is scheme dependent. I think that's probably fair to say. Granted, maybe you could argue, well, the reason, he's dependent on not being in an Adam Gase scheme, but I think that, there is a bit of a dependency, and losing A.J. Brown, it does hurt. Maybe Traylon Burks will come in and take that role, but I don't know. That, again, a lot to ask for a rookie. So I think this is a good take. Again, if I go through it and really look at it, maybe I'll disagree come a couple months from now, but as of right now, everything you said makes sense. I'm probably inclined to agree. So yeah, that was question of the day. Again, in the comments below, tell me who's a fraud? Who is the biggest fraud in the NFL? Leaving it open-ended. I'm going to have some fun with that one, I think. Put that in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.